The office carried the usual morning haze: burnt coffee, warm plastic, and the faint chemical bite of toner. Fluorescent panels hummed overhead, washing everything in a flat, unforgiving light. Desks sat in obedient rows, cluttered with files and half-empty mugs, the quiet chaos of routine workdays. To everyone else it was unremarkable. Just another weekday dissolving into the next. For me it was never that simple. Beneath the calm surface of professionalism, something electric followed me with every step. Nylon wrapped my legs in a smooth, secret embrace, snug and impossibly aware. The pantyhose clung like a whisper, sliding against my skin with each movement, turning the most ordinary walk across the tiled floor into something deliberate, almost ceremonial. Every stride sent a ripple of sensation upward, a reminder of what I carried beneath the mask. Hidden, forbidden, thrilling. On the outside I was careful to be forgettable. My clothes were chosen with precision. Skirts that fell at safe lengths, blouses that hinted at polish rather than personality, shoes that clicked softly but never demanded attention. I had spent years perfecting this version of myself. Efficient, reliable, unremarkable. No one questioned it. What no one saw was what lived underneath. It wasn't only the feel of the fabric or the muted sheen that caught the light just enough to make my pulse jump. It was the knowledge, the control, the quiet rebellion of knowing that something so intimate existed right there, unnoticed by everyone around me. I moved cautiously at first. Longer hems, opaque shades, heels just high enough to shape my posture but low enough to blend in. I measured every reflection I caught: elevator doors, glass walls, the chrome edge of the copier, watching for signs I'd miscalculated. Every glance was a silent check, still safe, still unseen. But safety had its cost. With the thrill came tension, a constant pressure beneath my ribs. Every time someone passed too close, every sudden sound or unexpected movement tightened that invisible knot. One careless moment could shatter the illusion I'd built so carefully. And then there was Isabella. My manager was sharp in a way that felt almost dangerous. Observant eyes, composed movements, the kind of presence that made rooms fall into order. I'd always respected her. Now I felt her attention differently. Every comment about my work, every pause when she looked my way felt charged with possibility. I feared her perception and craved it. The thought that she might notice something out of place, some subtle shimmer, some shift in the way I stood, sent a rush through me I couldn't deny. What would she think if she knew? Disapproval? Curiosity? Something more complicated? The closest call came without warning. I was near the copy room, smoothing my skirt, adjusting fabric with motions meant to look casual. Too casual perhaps. A co-worker appeared around the corner unexpectedly. I froze, heart slamming, back pressed lightly against the wall as if I could disappear into it. In that moment, everything felt magnified. The pull of the nylons, the tightness of my skirt, the heat beneath my skin. I barely breathed. They walked past. No pause. No comment. Nothing happened, but the surge that followed stayed with me long after. The fear, the relief, the intoxicating rush of almost being seen. That thin line between exposure and secrecy burned brighter than I ever expected. And once felt it was impossible to forget. That was the moment I understood it wasn't just a secret anymore. It had roots now. A pulse. Something that demanded attention. Every heartbeat carried the possibility of being noticed, and that risk fed me in a way routine never had. The office shifted in my mind. No longer a dull workplace but a carefully lit stage where every movement mattered. Shiny surfaces stopped being incidental. They became witnesses. Door handles reflected fragments of me. Elevator panels caught flashes of motion. The copier's glass, the break room windows, even darkened monitors offered glimpses, angles that tested my nerve. I became hyper-aware of how I moved, how I stood, how the fabric followed me. I was still invisible, but I felt intensely present inside my own body. The late hours were the most volatile. As desks emptied and voices faded, the building settled into a quiet hum. Fluorescent lights softened. Keyboards clicked somewhere far off. In that near solitude, every sensation sharpened. I'd pause, straighten my skirt, feel the nylon shift against my skin, aware that I was alone, and not nearly as safe as that illusion suggested. That edge was what I wanted. A door closing down the hall. A chair scraping. Sounds that shouldn't have mattered suddenly carried weight. My control felt fragile, but instead of retreating, I leaned into it. Fear and excitement tangled together until I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. Days blurred into a careful choreography. Each step across the floor, each minor adjustment, every stolen glance at my reflection became a negotiation. What had started as a private choice had taken on meaning: authority, secrecy, defiance. It proved that even the most sterile environment could hold danger if you knew where to look. By the end of the first week, the realization settled in quietly but firmly. This wasn't something I was doing anymore. It was something I was becoming. It lived in my posture, in the rhythm of my walk, in how I occupied space. The office had transformed into a place of tension and anticipation, and I felt more awake than I ever had. The second week erased any remaining illusion of control. What I wore beneath my professional exterior was no longer passive. It demanded awareness. Every reflective surface, from conference room glass to brushed metal doors, became a checkpoint. I watched myself constantly, noting how fabric moved, how light caught, how my stance subtly changed. The thrill had moved beyond the physical. It was mental now. Each step across the linoleum, each brush of fabric, each passing glance from a coworker felt loaded with possibility. I didn't just accept the risk, I sought it. The blend of anxiety and anticipation became addictive. Then one afternoon the quiet broke. I was near the printer when Isabella appeared. Unexpected, precise, her presence immediate. My pulse faltered. I'd been mid-motion, hands smoothing fabric, body angled just so. For a split second, everything I'd built felt like it might collapse. Her gaze lingered, not intrusive but attentive. Time stretched thin. "You carry yourself differently," she said at last. Calm. Measured. It wasn't an accusation. It wasn't praise. But it landed with weight. My breath caught. The moment passed quickly, she moved on, the printer whirred, but the impact stayed. The idea of exposure was no longer abstract. It had brushed against reality, and the sensation was electric. After that, the office felt charged. Every hallway, every pause, every reflection buzzed with possibility. Being seen, or almost seen, sent a rush through me I couldn't shake. That evening, I lingered in the break room, papers in hand, thoughts elsewhere. My reflection stared back from the stainless steel refrigerator. Composed from the outside, something entirely different beneath. Half concealed. Half daring. I knew then that I was testing boundaries. Mine and everyone else's. I walked with more intention now. Let movement become expression. Let light play where it might. Ordinary tasks turned strategic. Filing. Pupping. Refilling coffee. Each one carried its own quiet risk. But the thrill had a shadow. Anxiety crept in, sharp and persistent. Every glance had the power to unravel everything. That fear only intensified the experience, making it impossible to ignore. I caught myself imagining outcomes. What it would mean if someone truly noticed, if Isabella or anyone else understood what I carried beneath the surface. The thought unsettled me. It also pulled me closer. One afternoon, footsteps echoed sooner than expected. I stiffened, fingers gripping the counter. Body pressed still as a coworker rounded the corner. A glance passed over me. Nothing lingered. When they moved on, the rush nearly stole my breath. That night, walking home, my mind replayed the day in fragments. Reflections, near misses, moments of balance on the edge. I wasn't hiding something anymore. I was living inside it. And with each passing day, each flicker of reflected light, each heartbeat steeped in risk, I slipped further into a game I no longer wanted to escape. One played beneath fluorescent lights in quiet hallways, long after most people had gone home. I lingered beside my desk longer than necessary, fingertips smoothing the fabric of my skirt, aware of the way the hosiery beneath responded to every touch and movement. The secret no longer felt passive. It had weight now, an almost sentient presence that followed me through the room. Reflections caught in cabinet doors and glass partitions seemed to murmur warnings. Or invitations. I wasn't sure which anymore. I'd started pushing myself. Hems crept higher. Necklines dipped just enough to feel intentional. Heels struck the floor with confidence I hadn't bothered hiding. The risk pulsed through me with every step, turning ordinary motion into calculated provocation. I feared being noticed, and yet I kept daring the world to notice me. A glance from a coworker was enough to spike my pulse. Even neutral eyes felt charged. Every reflective surface tempted me with the possibility that I'd misjudged something, that the line I walked was thinner than I'd believed. Then the quiet shifted. The receptionist appeared at the far end of the hallway, papers tucked against her chest, the day stretching late around her. My heart stumbled. I stopped mid-stride, hands braced lightly against a counter, trying to disappear into stillness. But stillness betrayed me. Light traced the faint sheen along my legs, subtle but undeniable. Her attention lingered. Not crude. Not unkind. Just aware. "Oh," she murmured almost to herself. Then softer, meant only for me, "You carry yourself with confidence. No teasing. No judgment." The words landed harder than any accusation could have. Fear flared. Pride followed. For a suspended moment the office fell away. The hum of lights, the cold metal reflecting fragments of me, the rush in my veins were all that existed. I understood then. This wasn't just a thrill anymore. It had fused itself into me. The secrecy, the risk, the anticipation, they moved together now, inseparable. That night, sleep refused to come easily. My thoughts replayed the day in flashes. Glances held a second too long, reflections that lingered, the electricity of nearly being seen. The danger no longer scared me away. It pulled me closer. By week's end, restraint felt optional. I walked with purpose, letting movement speak where words never could. I paused longer in hallways, adjusted my clothing with deliberate care, allowed reflections to find me. Fear stayed close, but it had become familiar, a companion rather than a warning. Somewhere beneath it all, a quiet voice cautioned me. This couldn't go on forever. One day the balance would tip. Consequences would demand their due. But not yet. The silence of the office deepened as evening settled in. Machines rested. Conversations faded. Only my footsteps echoed, each click of my heels loud against the floor, announcing risks I refused to retreat from. Near the copy room I paused again, smoothing fabric, acutely aware of how exposed I felt in the emptiness. Then I heard footsteps. Measured. Intentional. My body reacted before thought could catch up. Stillness, breath held back against the counter. Light caught where I least wanted it to. The footsteps stopped. Isabella. Her gaze registered everything at once. The pause. The tension. The quiet defiance in how I stood. "You've been testing limits," she said calmly, her voice precise, almost analytical. "I was curious how far you'd push." Speech abandoned me. The room felt too small, too sharp. Every instinct urged escape. Yet something stronger held me in place, craving the weight of her attention. "Do you understand what you're risking?" she asked, stepping closer, eyes attentive, not cruel. I did. And that knowledge was the problem. A sound echoed down the hall. Movement elsewhere, a reminder of the world beyond this moment. Her gaze flicked away, then returned. The tension didn't break. It thickened. "You manage danger well," she said quietly. "Better than most." When she left, my knees nearly gave out. The office no longer felt neutral. It felt alive. Watching. I knew then the game had shifted. This was no longer about hiding. It was about control, about standing at the edge and refusing to step back. Outside, the city greeted me with unusual stillness. Hours had passed, yet the charge from the day clung stubbornly to my skin. I hoped distance would dilute it. It didn't. I slipped into a small cafe, seeking noise, anonymity, something grounding. But mirrors lined the walls. Polished tables caught reflections. Even here I felt seen. And then, across the room, I noticed her. It wasn't Isabella. The realization hit me a split second too late. Across the cafe someone turned, and recognition flared in their eyes. A former coworker. Someone I hadn't crossed paths with in months. Their gaze dropped instinctively, catching the faint gloss beneath my skirt, and my stomach tightened hard. I stopped mid-step, fingers curling around the strap of my bag as if it could anchor me. My heartbeat turned thunderous. "Well," they said lightly, surprise edged with amusement, "this is unexpected." The smile that followed wasn't unkind, but it lingered. Their eyes did too. Long enough to trace my legs, the way my skirt moved, the way I held myself now. I tried to speak, tried to sound casual, but my voice faltered halfway through the sentence. They laughed softly. Not mocking. Worse, curious. "You've changed," they said, eyes flicking back to the shimmer I wished didn't exist. Heat rushed to my face. I wanted to dissolve into the background noise, into the steam of espresso and the low murmur of voices. Instead, a dangerous spark flared inside me. This wasn't hiding anymore. This was standing on the edge and feeling the ground give just slightly beneath my feet. I forced myself to breathe slowly. Just trying things, I said, keeping it vague, rehearsing exits in my head. Door, street, anonymity. They leaned closer, lowering their voice. You like the attention. The words landed like a jolt of electricity. My pulse spiked. How could they see it so clearly? Panic surged, but underneath it, undeniable, was a thrill so sharp it made my knees weak. Part of me wanted to flee. Another part, reckless, newly awakened, wanted to stay and see what would happen if I didn't. That was when it became clear. The danger itself was the draw. Not the secret, but the moment it hovered on the brink of exposure. The fear. The vulnerability. The power in surviving it. My skirt shifted as I adjusted my stance, and I knew the game had crossed into new territory. The cafe no longer felt safe. It felt charged. Reflections in glass and steel watched silently. I'd thought I held the reins, but the thrill had tightened its grip. As I gathered myself to leave, a shadow fell across the table. Someone else stood there. Unfamiliar. So observant. My breath stalled as adrenaline surged fresh and sharp. Whatever balance I'd managed shattered instantly. This wasn't coincidence anymore. This was convergence. I left soon after, too quickly, too aware, escaping into the night air like someone fleeing a dream that had turned predatory. The city felt colder than before. Quieter. My legs still carried the reminder of the evening, the fabric beneath my skirt hugging me with relentless familiarity. At the corner I stopped, hands trembling as I smoothed my clothes, trying to steady myself. That's when the feeling crept in. The unmistakable sense of being followed. Reflections betrayed me, storefront glass, polished cars, even the dark water pooled along the curb. Each one seemed to hold a version of me, watched and measured. I felt movement behind me, deliberate and silent. My pace quickened. Heels tapped sharply against the pavement. Every option raced through my mind. Turn, run, confront, disappear. Choice held risk. And risk had become irresistible. A shadow lengthened beside me. Then another. I glanced back. Two figures emerged from the dark. One was familiar, the colleague from the cafe, smiling with quiet amusement. The other stayed half hidden, face unreadable, gaze cutting through me with unsettling precision. You really don't want this to stop, do you? The familiar voice murmured. My body froze. The fabric beneath my skirt felt suddenly constricting, unforgiving. Windows along the street reflected fragments of me. Movement, light, exposure. Every heartbeat ticked louder, counting down. The stranger stepped closer. The air thickened. Fear and exhilaration collided so completely I couldn't separate them anymore. Running felt impossible. Staying felt inevitable. Just as I opened my mouth to speak, to choose, the streetlight above us flickered once, then died. Darkness swallowed everything. Breath held. Shadows stilled.